I started using meth when I was 14. I was like 13, 14. And I had a little bit of an eating disorder. I had body dysmorphia and I was worried about my weight. I was always taking like diet pills and things like that. And so I was dating this guy and he was like, do you want to try meth? I'm like, yeah, sure. And it wasn't like, it wasn't, you would think it would be like, oh, you should smoke some weed or do something like that. No, I was like, oh, is it like diet pills? And he's like, yeah, it is. I said, great, give it to me. Did my first.
How old is this guy? You're 13 or 14 years old.
He's the same age. He's like a year older than me, age-wise, but in the same grade. And he had an older brother that, had access to drugs, but he's like, yeah, here you go, do a line. I'm like, cool. I did it. You're
dating a guy that was like in a trailer park? Like what no. Middle class American has access to at 13, 14?
His dad was a cop.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Kansas City's not like Tampa.
No, his dad's a cop. My dad's an attorney. We have, we both come from good families. To this day, both of his parents, I believe, are still married. I know my parents are still married. Like, there's no excuse. We just were fearless. This is back in the 90s. It's just, it's not like today where people are like, oh, I'm going to die of fentanyl.
Right.
I was like, oh, it's like diet pills. Great. Sign me up. I didn't even have you didn't have to talk me into anything. It wasn't like he was like, oh, you got to do some drugs. I was like, yes, let's do the drugs.
Okay.
But so I was like, okay, cool. But I wasn't the type of drug user that wanted to go and get high with a bunch of people because I didn't like people really. I like to go ride my horses and do all my stuff with that. But I didn't really get too heavily into it till I was 16. He turned 16 before I did, about a year. So 15, he's 16, I'm 15. We're running out to Kansas to pick up drugs and do all this stuff. And that's when it really got going, was once he turned 16 and we were mobile. His older brother was friends with some bikers out there. And so that's how I got into that. But I didn't I wasn't the high school girl that was like, oh, let's go to the parties and stuff. I never went to the parties because I was at horse shows. I showed horses all over the country. So I didn't like hang out with anybody. So there was nobody that was like, oh yeah, she gets high, because nobody knew. But I was like, I was running 10 miles a day. I was lettering in academics. I was doing 1,000 sit-ups. I was like all over the place. I was like, yeah, I'm doing it. But I was also like super ADHD. So like when I wasn't high, I felt like I wanted to jump out of my skin and run away. And then I would get high and I was like, I could do everything and be cool about it. You know what I mean? I was just like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. And so eventually at some point, I made friends with people that were cooks, and I was able to get them some ingredients. And so I always had pretty much whatever I wanted, and it wasn't a big deal to me. There was never a part of me that was like, oh my God, this is so bad. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm like, because in my brain, I was like, this helps me. Right. I mean, I'm lettering in academics. I'm able to run 10 miles. I'm able to do all these things, go ride 4 horses, go do whatever. I'm taking care of everything, and nobody knows. Nobody knows anything. I can go down in the bathroom and do what I need to do, and then I'm cool for the next day.
Okay. So yeah, it's not like you're prostituting yourself on 56 and Bush Boulevard to get the money. The money is simply you're just swapping out chemicals for drugs that are very accessible, and you're just really self-medicating.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's more of a self-medication type thing. And then I lettered in academics. I got into college. I did my 4-year undergrad at UMKC, and then I got into law school. I took the LSAT, got into law school. I did 1 year law school there. And when I got into law school, I was like, it might be time to like stop doing drugs. Maybe
right.
Which was the stupidest thing. All of it was stupid. But so I'm going to get into law school and go through withdrawal and come off all this stuff that I've been using for years. And then I'm going to be successful. Like it was bad timing. And so, I started.
Where's my boyfriend? But that guy's gone.
Oh, he's long gone.
Yeah. Okay.
He's
high school.
That was high school. We have gone on to college and now law school. But so I was in this mindset that I wasn't doing drugs, that now I'm sober, you know, which is complete bullshit, because I was still going out partying. I was still drinking, maybe eating some acid on the weekend. You know, I'm just doing my thing, but I'm not doing meth. So in my brain, I've stopped using drugs because that was my drug. So if I use other things and drink and do whatever, then, you know, it's no big deal.
Right.
That's how my brain processed everything, which is, my brain is part of my whole problem. But because I'm like, no, this is cool. This is fine. You know, no big deal. But so then I ended up quitting law school. I did the first year and I was like, this is not for me. But I was also going through a lot of emotional stuff with, probably because I'd been using drugs for years and I'm going through coming off drugs. You know, looking back, I'm like, that was just terrible timing. So
do your parents have any idea any of this is happening?
So at one point, one of my horses got really sick and he colicked. And so I was at the barn and I was walking this horse. We're, you know, trying to get him.
What does that mean? Colicked.
So if a horse can't throw up and they can't shit, their stomach will turn into a knot and they'll die.
Oh, okay.
And these are show horses. So it was not like, it was a big deal. And they were my babies. So I'd spent all day at the barn and I ended up leaving the barn. I went over to a friend's house, one of the few friends' house that knew anything about any of what I did. And so I get to his house and he had like an intervention with his family. His dad was also a cop. And so they have this big intervention and they're like, hey, we know everything. We know everything that you're doing. I'm like, you know, I don't even know what to say. I'm not even admitting to it at this point. I'm like, what? I'm just kind of taking it all in. The phone rings. I had a cell phone since I was 16. The phone rings. It's my dad. And he's like, hey, your horse is sick and I have him in the trailer and I need you to meet me on Front Street so we can get in the truck. So you can get in the truck so you can come with me to Columbia to get this emergency surgery, because we had to have him cut open and have his intestines cleaned out by hand. So you have one shot with this thing. If a horse starts colicking, you got one shot. And back in those days, there was no vets close that could possibly do this surgery. So you had to shoot him up with a lot of drugs and then just pray that he made it for the trip, because if they go down, that's the end. You got to put him down on the road. So it's a whole thing. So it was really stressful. Anyway, my friend's dad drives me to go meet my dad on Front Street. And he gets in the car and gets in the truck. And my dad's sitting there and he's like, what? And he's like, your daughter has a lot to tell you, and do not let her out of this truck until she tells you everything. And my dad's like, what? So I'm like, hi. And so I get in this truck. We're now about to do like 3 hours in the car with the truck, the trailer, and the horse. So my dad's driving along and he's like, what do you want to tell me? And I was like, I've done a lot of drugs, a lot. And meth is my favorite drug. And I've done a lot of meth. He's like, how do you do it? And I was like, every way. Because I was shooting up at the time. I was doing all of it. I was not afraid of it at all.
Right.
And he's like, okay, what do you want to do? And I was like, I guess I'll go to rehab. I don't know. I guess I'll go to rehab. I was like, my friend, he was just at rehab and this place has really good ice cream. So maybe I could go there. And my dad's like, okay. So what I didn't know is that the guy that I was dating at this time was putting heroin in the that I was shooting. And so I didn't realize that I had now a lot of heroin and meth in my system. I wasn't paying, like he would fix shots up for me and I'm like, yeah, cool, whatever. I wasn't paying attention to that. And so we end up in Columbia. The horse gets his surgery. It's now the next morning at 5 a.m. And my dad, we had to leave the horse there. So we had to drive back in the truck. And now it's Saturday. It's like maybe Friday or Saturday. So it's too late to like go to rehab. You know, we're going to go to rehab on Monday. So Friday night sets in and I'm in my bedroom. I'm sweating and I think it was sometime into the weekend, I start hallucinating. I thought a car pulled up next to my bed and like people got out and started partying. And I was like, I can't do this right now. And then I was army crawling to the bathroom, throwing up. I was really sick. And I was like, what is happening to me? And I think it was Sunday night. This guy called me. He was like, I need to tell you something. I'm like, okay. And he's like, this guy has been putting heroin in your meth that he knew you were shooting. And so you're coming off of heroin. That's what you're doing right now. And I'm like, fuck. You know, if I would have known that's what it was, I might have gotten myself up and gone to try to find something. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
I didn't realize that that's what was going on, which is probably a huge blessing, but it was horrible. It was the worst thing that I've ever been through. So I was like, yeah, I'm good on the heroin thing. You know, that's all for you guys. I'm good. So I went to the rehab. I ate all the ice cream and gained a bunch of weight and everything. You know how you do. But but I thought the rehab was really stupid because, you know, all you do is sit around and talk about the drugs that you did all day long. So in 30 days, and I'm outpatient, because by the time I get there, they're like, well, you've detoxed yourself. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay, well, you can do outpatient. You can't do inpatient. You're already detoxed. By Monday, it's like, we're already like almost 5 days detox. She's like, you don't need to be inpatient. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I did the outpatient and did the meeting stuff and all that stuff. And it wasn't too long after that I was right back into it until I got to law school. So my parents are much older. My mom was 38 when she had me. My dad is 5 years younger than her, but they're older. I'm my dad's only daughter. My brother was a super good kid, so nobody alerted them to the fact that kids are crazy and will do some really weird things. And so they just kind of, you know, they're just super good people. And, you know, when you're super good people, you just think, oh, this isn't happening. My kids. But when I first told my dad I was using drugs, at one point he was like, you know, I just thought maybe you were crazy. It's like, that's fair.
At least this is fixable.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it's not a mental thing. Well, it's a mental thing, but, you know, maybe we can work with this. You know, it's okay. We can get through this. But my dad's super cool. He's super laid back, and that's how he approaches things. Okay, we have this problem. Let's find the solution, and then we're going to move forward, and we're a united front, and that's how we're going to be. And so that's how he's always been with me. And so so I did the law school thing. I quit law school. I was drinking a whole lot. And one day, I think it was about 2 months after I quit law school, I was still living at my parents' house. And I remember I got up and I was like, I'm going to be a realtor. That's what I'm going to do today. So I got up and I go upstairs, and my mom's sitting there, and she's like, what are you doing today, honey? And I was like, I think I'm going to go be a realtor. She's like, you're going to be the best realtor. I'm like, I am. So I went out and got my real estate license. I got enrolled in a class, and I got my real estate license, and I started doing that. I did really well with that. And at some point in there, I met my now ex-husband, who drank a lot of whiskey with me. And you know, I wasn't using drugs, and I was away from drugs completely at this point. No coke, no nothing. It was just whiskey. You know, that was my new thing. I was in love with whiskey. So we were married for about 1.5 years when I started thinking about a divorce. And then I was pregnant, and I was like, yeah, well, I guess here I am. I guess this is happening. I was like 26. And I remember telling my dad, I'm like, I'm pregnant. He's like, this is wonderful. I told him like I was a child. I was like, I'm pregnant. And he's like, this is great. I want a grandkid. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess we're doing this. You know, I guess, okay. I never really wanted kids. I was just like, all right, we're doing this thing. So, I can't stand my ex-husband. Cannot stand this guy. You know what I mean? And
how did that come about? Like, I'm assuming at one point you found him appealing.
I did. He was funny and he was fun, and we like had a great time. And then I got sober. I stopped drinking, and there was nothing cool.
I thought I was in love with you, but it was the alcohol.
I love whiskey. It's not you. It has nothing to do with you, apparently. And so I was like, yeah, this sucks. You know, I don't know what I'm going to do, but that was a whole mess. And so I was completely clean, and for a good 4 years of my daughter's life. And by the time she was about I don't know, probably 2-3 months old. She was in a pumpkin seat going to show houses and stuff with me. And so she was a big part of my real estate career. I mean, This kid showed more houses because I'm like, listen, we're doing this and you're coming because your dad sucks. And so it's just me and you, kid. It's us. He's still at the house. I'm just like pretending like he's not there. I'm just going to keep it moving. And
what is he doing? He's a realtor too?
No, he's not. He's he worked for FedEx, National Freight. He was a diesel mechanic.
Oh, I thought you said you met him when you were doing the real estate.
When I was in real estate, he was, we had mutual friends. We all went on a float trip, drank a lot of whiskey. And I was like, you're the funnest person I've ever been around, ever. Like, you are so funny and cool. And I just stayed drunk a lot. So, that didn't occur to me. And I was like, 6 months later, he's like, let's get married. I'm like, awesome. Let's go to Vegas and get married. And we did. Like, we drank the whole way there and the whole way home, bought a house on land. And then I was pregnant with my daughter. I'm like, yeah, this is happening. This is really, we're doing this thing, And I look back on my life, like leading up to that, and I'm like, well, it's kind of shocking I made it that far. Like, as crazy as I was as a teenager, just doing whatever, it's amazing. I was like, oh, I made it, okay, I'm doing okay. This isn't too bad. And then my daughter, she was like 18 months old. She could walk and talk well. She'd be showing houses. She'd walk in and she'd be like, what beautiful carpet this is. Or what beautiful cabinets these are. And I was selling a bunch of condos downtown Kansas City, and I had investors that loved her. And they're like, will you bring your daughter today? I'm like, really? So like one day I'm driving down Broadway and I've got a 6-seater golf cart, and she's sitting on my lap. And there used to be the Folgers coffee plant that was right there. And so I'm cruising down Broadway. I got investors on the back. I got my daughter on my lap. It was right around the time of Britney Spears getting caught with her kids on her lap when she was driving. And so I'm driving past Folgers, and they're like, hey, Brittany. I'm like, shut up. But anyway, so she showed all kinds of stuff with me. We had a really good time. And I didn't work a ton during the week because we were busy. We were going to the zoo. We were going to Oceans of Fun. And yeah, we had a great time. But around the time she was about 4, I was like, I can't do this marriage thing anymore. So, and I remember the day where I was like, this is it. I can't do it. It was like we had taken her to the zoo in the morning, came back. He started playing video games. I got on the tractor, brush hogged, the whole entire pasture. I have 10 acres. Brush hog the whole pasture and then get on the other mower and finish mowed everything. And then I come in and clean the house, do the laundry, get the kid food. And then he's like, comes in and tries to put his hand on my leg. And I'm like, fuck you. Absolutely not. Don't touch me. Don't do it. So I told my dad, I was like, I can't do it. Because I had tried to do it when Lily was 2. And my dad was like, you have to wait till she can walk and talk really well before you try to do this. Because without going into details, his parents are crazy and he's pretty vindictive. So anyway, at 4, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And, you're not wrapping your brain around the fact that you're going to be stuck with this person for the duration of until they're 18. You got an 18-year sentence with this person.
Right.
So yeah. And that was a mess. And so once we got divorced, he ended up getting with another girl that decided that she absolutely hated me. And she started filing restraining orders against me. And the first one, my dad was really pissed. And I was like, I've never seen this girl in person. I don't know how this is crazy. Like, how do you file a restraining? So we get to court. And this girl proceeds to tell the judge that she's never seen me in person. And he threw her out of the courtroom and threw out the case. And she busted through the double doors with her arm and throws a temper tantrum on the floor in the courthouse. I've never seen anything like it. And you know that she proceeded to file 5 more restraining orders against me. She just kept going back and filing.
So what did the same judge, does he keep just kicking him out?
Kicking him out until the very last one where he's like, okay, he calls my ex-husband up he's like, Mr. Morgan, you're going to have to do some work here because this is the mother of your child. And this is your new wife and she's not the mother. So, he's like, I'm going to give Miss Morgan something she hasn't even asked for. I'm thinking, what am I going to get? And he's like, I'm going to give her a restraining order against her. He's like, Miss Benjamin, at the time, Miss Benjamin, when you were at a soccer game with his daughter and the mother shows up, you're going to pick up your keys and get in your car and you're going to leave. Well, I never asked for a restraining order, so there was nothing in place for me to actually, back this thing up. It all sounded good, but at the end of the day, it didn't work out like that.
Right.
And so, they continued to do all kinds of crazy stuff. And like, I'd be at the soccer games with my daughter and they'd call the cops. And even the cops would show up and be like, what are we doing here? I was like, basically, you're here just for show. You're just here to humiliate me and to make a scene so that I don't want to come back to soccer games. That's all you're doing at this point. But that's a really tough deal. That's hard to deal with.
You didn't see this coming beforehand? This guy wasn't like, there were no signs this guy was an idiot prior to this?
Oh, he's an idiot, but I didn't think he had this much energy.
Okay. Because it was mostly playing video games and sit down the couch.
Yeah. So, I mean, like the effort and the energy that went behind so much of this stuff was almost impressive to me. Because I was like,
I got somebody who did have the energy.
Exactly. Yes. And so she wanted my daughter to be her daughter and she wanted me to be gone. And so we were week on, week off with custody. And with all of this going on, it just got to where it was too much for me. And I was incredibly depressed. You're going to get, it just, when it's like that and you have to exchange at the police station and you don't know if the cops are going to show up and start, because they called them. And because they called them on me so many times, and like every single time the cops were like, I don't understand what I'm doing here. Well, neither does anybody else. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you because I'm the mom and I'm here to pick up my daughter. And there was a lot of stories in between that was just absolutely crazy. But anyway, so that is where the depression really started kicking in, anxiety, depression. So when she went to her dad, I started losing my mind and I went back to my first love, which is meth. I started off with ADHD meds. I went to the doctor. I got Adderall and Xanax and got back on the ADHD. I actually had a real ADHD med prescription. So that didn't do it for me because I remembered the old ways, the olden days when, I had something that actually works. And so I ran into a friend that from the olden days and he was like, do you want some? I'm like, yep. And that's all it took. Because, if you have been an addict in your past and you step away from it, you get cleaned up. When you go back, I think it's 20 times worse. Like physically, and maybe drugs were different at that point. You know what I mean? Like things had changed and I had changed. And so when I went back to it, it was the most slippery slope you've ever seen.
What do you mean?
My addiction was unbelievable when I went back to it. So I'd have my daughter week on, week off. When I had her, I shut it down. I wasn't doing anything. I'd have my week with her. But when she'd go back to her dad's house, like the minute I dropped her off, I was like, somebody needs to come get me high, like right now. Like I need to do this. So I did. And, as your addiction grows, you look, and as you're older, it's interesting because we shop at Costco and stuff like that. And you buy everything in bulk because you don't want to run out. Like I have so much crap at my house that I buy in bulk. Like everything I get is in bulk, like ridiculous amounts of bulk. And that was my mentality because I wanted to make sure I had it at all times. And so I started buying more and more and more of it. And then, people that were close to me knew that I could get a lot of it. And so it was just me and a couple people that I was like, all right, sure, let's do this. And it, it really wasn't that big of a deal. I didn't think, I just felt like it was just such a little deal in my head. Like, really, it wasn't that big a deal. But
you didn't think it was a big deal when you were 14 and doing meth.
Exactly. But I also fell asleep one day. I took a long nap and I woke up, 7-8 hours later to a whole bunch of phone calls and text messages. Everybody nobody could find anything. And I was sleeping with it. So I kind of started realizing that maybe I was a bigger problem than I thought for myself and probably the whole city.
You took a nap and the whole city went down. The town is dry. Why?
I don't know. I'm like,
nap.
Oh, I don't know where anything is. It might, I bet it'll show up in a little bit. I just didn't really tell them. I was like, oh yeah, I don't have anything at all. Because I just didn't tell people. I didn't want them to come over. Whatever. But so at one point, there was a guy that I was introduced to. And this part all happened like within a month and a half. It was a weird, interesting thing. Like there was some Mexicans that got busted, and there was a whole weird deal with that. And I was like, it's time to get away. This is.
What do you mean there were some Mexicans? So you were buying from some Mexicans and they got busted.
One of the brothers got busted, and I was like, oh yeah, this is about to get ugly around here.
I thought you were just getting stuff from somebody you used to know. Was that the guy a Mexican?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I thought you'd been a childhood friend. I thought he must mix it.
The first was just a friend. That was just a friend. And then I went on and, people that can network really well, you have this ability to find whatever it is that you want to find and whatever quantity that you want to find. So it started off with a friend that ended up with Mexicans.
No, I know. You talked to Billy next door, and then you talked to his friend Jerry, who knows a guy named Pablo. And the next thing you know, you're buying directly from Mayo Zambada, the head of the Sinaloa cartel. I know exactly what you're saying. Isn't that how it always works? I've heard that story 1,000 times.
Exactly.
So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just it. It's really not that unique.
Next thing you know, you deal with the cartel. It slips up on you.
These things happen. They just do. But so I was introduced to a guy that I'd known him for maybe a month and a half, and he was like, hey, can you get anything? I'm like, no, I can't get anything at all. And so, but he kept kind of coming around. He was friends with a guy that I was friends with. And so everybody kept trying to get a hold of me for stuff, and I'm like ready to be completely out of it. I'm like, I don't know what anybody's talking about at this point. Like, I'm done. Like, it's over. This would have been December of 2013. I'm like, I'm out. I don't want any part. I'm like, I don't know where anything's at. I can't get anything. Well, people don't take no for an answer when it comes to that. They're like, yeah, you do. You know how to get it. I'm like, I don't know how to get anything. I don't know how to do it all. So we have the one guy that I knew for about a month and a half, and he's friends with this other guy. So in January, other guy starts texting me, and he's trying to get me to go out with them and trying to get me to like hook up business partner wise. And I'm like, I am not interested in either, but thank you. I'm like, no, I'm good. So this goes on like through January of 2014. And it was probably the last week of January, this guy got really pissed off at me, and he starts sending me pages of text messages explaining to me of what he's going to go and tell the feds. Now, this is,
leap.
What an interesting way to take a rejection. And it's really kind of baffled me to this very day is that, like, this is a guy that was selling a bunch of out of a hotel in Kearney. Kearney, Missouri. He's selling a whole bunch of out of this hotel. And I'm like, why do you want anything to do with me? Just leave me alone. His girlfriend lived at the hotel with him. We're not going on a date. I don't want any part of any of this meth. And I'm not going to come to a hotel. I don't want any part of it. But anyway, he keeps sending me these text messages of what he's going to go to the feds with. Well, I would flash back to law school to where I was like, that's hearsay. I mean, first of all, like, this is what you're going to do? Like, this is what you're saying? Like, you're in a situation where, like, people are like, you do the crime, you better do the time. I was like, well, I don't even know what to say to this. I'm like, but he's going through and he's giving me details of that he's going to tell them I'm the Kingpin and that I'm doing all this stuff and that I'm acting like a kingpin and I'm running this huge organization.
Has he been arrested?
This guy.
He's just saying, I'm just going to go in and do this.
Yeah.
Unless you and I, start hooking up and start selling, start
doing some business.
You're right.
Yeah. So, and when I tell you the detail that I would love to have this phone. I wish I had this phone because I didn't even really show anybody this. I remember standing in my garage smoking a cigarette and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I've seen people get upset with rejection, but I've never seen anything like this. But I'm like, he's going to go to the cops and just tell them this stuff. I was like, well, if they don't catch me with anything, then it won't matter. I mean, like, what's he going to do? If I'm not doing anything, they can't get me. There's nothing to get. And so, February, I believe it was February 2nd, I had bought this it was like a 98 Yukon 2-door square body truck. And this was going to be my project truck. I was going to make it hot pink and black. I was real excited about this truck. By buying this truck, I changed out the wheels on it. I put on I had some really pretty wheels with big tires, but the tires were really kind of shit. But they looked cool. But I was like, I'll get the tires changed out later. It's fine. It looks cool with those rims. We're going to start there. Well, then my daughter and I, we go out to play games at Dave & Buster's, and we're on our way back and it's snowing. And I figure out that this thing, the 4-wheel drive doesn't work in this thing. And I'm like, might be a pin. I don't know. Maybe it's something simple. So I get back to the house. I get a hold of the guy that I had known for about a month and a half because I knew he worked on cars. And I'm like, hey, I need the 4-wheel drive looked at in this truck. If you have some time, if you're over by this way, if you can stop by. And he's like, yeah, okay, cool. Well, then he shows up with his ex-wife and she's like the sweetest lady on earth. And I'm like, he's like, here, we're out already. So I just thought I'd swing by and take a look. And I'm like, okay. And I mean, I'd met the ex-wife a couple times. She had several children. She's nice. Really nice lady. Anyway, my daughter's in bed sleeping. And I'm like, okay. So he goes out. He works on the truck for a little bit. And she and I are sitting in there watching TV, just chit-chatting. So he comes back in and he's like, hey, I think I got it fixed. Do you want to go for a test drive really quick? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. That's fine. Because she's like, oh, I can stay here. She's sleeping. It's no big deal. I'm just going to sit here and watch this show. We were watching some trash TV. I don't even remember what it was. She's like, I'm gonna stay here and watch this and I'll stay with her. It's no problem. So we take off. It's snowing and icing and he's driving. We get down the street and I'm like, it's not working. So he went just a little bit further and I was like, all right, turn around. I'm good. I'm going back. Cause I'm thinking I will walk, that's fine. Now let me back up just a little bit.
Well, why? I mean, he's still going. Why is he still going?
The 4-wheel drive was not working. So why are we still going?
Right. You said turn around. Why didn't he turn around?
Exactly. I don't know. It's getting weirder, but I'm just like, okay, whatever. So I had been in high-speed chases with this guy in the month prior. I had been with him on 2 occasions where he was like, hey, hop in, let's go here. I went with him. He's wanted. So we'd been in 2 previous high-speed chases. Again, no fear. But I'm like, okay, cool. We're out in the country. We're not, nobody's out here. It's maybe like midnight or something. Nobody's out here. No big deal. We're just going to go down the street, turn around, come back. No problem. So he kept going. And then when I was like, okay, you're turning around or I'm walking, like, what is it going to be? And so he pulls into this driveway. And when he does, the cops roll up on us and they flip their lights on. And I'm like, are you fucking serious right now? Like, this is happening right now? Like, you never see cops out there at this time. Like, it's middle of the night. We're going to turn around and the tags are fine. I just had gotten this truck, so I don't understand. So anyway, I was like, I looked at him. He looks at me. He's like, I'm wanted. I was like, we don't have 4-wheel drive. We have bald-ass tires. What are you going to do? I just put my seatbelt on. I was like, oh, my God. So he goes to pull out in front of this cop. The cop is sitting on the road with his lights on. He pulls out of this driveway and pulls in front of the cop. And he's heading up this hill. And the cop isn't moving. He's just sitting there with his lights on. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on right now? So we get up over the hill. There's another cop standing there with the stop sticks. And he goes to throw them out. But he doesn't get them out all the way. So this guy just makes a right on the next country road. He's heading down the road. You hear sirens. You can see lights in the distance, but nobody's really chasing. I looked at him. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is the strange, like, do you have any idea what's going on? Like, did you do something earlier? Is there some reason that this is happening right now? No. I'm like, all right, cool. To this day, I'll never understand it because none of it makes sense. But at one point, he turned out another road, decides he's going to make a turn. I'm like, this road doesn't go through. And I've got 2 rules with relationships and high-speed chases. Once you hit the accelerator, you never let off and you never turn around. You never go back the way you came. You don't do it. Well, he had to turn around and go back the way he came. It sounded better to me just to get out and run. I was like, let's just leave it here and I'll deal with that later. I'll walk back. I'm fine with that.
Right.
I'm a country girl. I don't have any problems. So he turns around. He's heading back in the same direction. And I'm like, here we go. This is going to be bad. Well, there's a cop that's pulled over on the side of the road. We're going a good 25 miles an hour because it's slippery as shit. Cop's over in the grass. He doesn't have his lights on. He's out in front of his car. He's aiming a gun. Like, I can see him in his headlights, but he doesn't have like the flashers on. And he's shining a light into the car so he can see where I'm at. He's shining it at me. I can see it firing. Like, you can see it, but you can't hear it because you can't hear it on the receiving end. And then as we go by him, there's nobody in harm's way. There's nothing in front of us. There's nobody ahead of us. As we go by him, he shoots 5 times at the back of my head. And the guy driving is like, oh my God, he's shooting at us. And I said, and I felt it. I got hit. And I was like, yeah, I just got shot. And I went like that and blood poured everywhere. And he was like, oh my God, I got to get you to a hospital. I was like, you're not going to get me to a fucking hospital, dude. Let me out at the stop sign. I will get myself to the fucking hospital one way or another. You ain't getting nowhere. And, but 2 bullets were in my headrest, like in the metal part of the headrest. 2 bullets were in front of me in the dash, and 1 was in the back of my head. And
it was in your head. So did it go through the headrest?
It went through the window and then it went into my head. So I had like a high ponytail, like bun type thing. And it spun a nest in the center of it. And so it was in my head. It was poked into my skull. But it got stopped in my hair. And so, yeah, I mean, why wouldn't it? Right. So, he stopped.
Is it in your, like, did it penetrate your skull?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay.
Yeah, so I can smell my hair and flesh burning, from the hot bullet. I can smell everything burning. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to die. This is going to suck. So I get out of the truck and I was like, just fucking go. I slam the door and then I'm standing there and I'm thinking, what the fuck am I going to do now? And I asked myself, I was like, what do I do? And I in my, you have that conscious thing that talks to you when you're about to go, into shock and everything. And I don't know, I think it was God that was like, what are you going to do with this now? Like, are you going to fight for this? Or are you just going to, what are you going to do? Now, like, what are you going to do with all this? I'm like, well, all you got to do is mention a fight to me and I'm in, like, that's cool. Like, let's fight for it. So here comes all the cops and they surround me. I got blood pouring from head to toe. It's filling up my boot. And I'm like, you motherfuckers. I was like, so is that your policy to shoot the passenger? Or, like, that's how you stop the truck is to shoot I'm talking to him just like this. Blood pouring everywhere. And they're just looking at me like I'm a circus animal. I was like, well, I was like, say something. What? I was like, you shot me. I'm the passenger. He's like, well, you guys shot at us. I said, oh, no, we didn't. And I said, what I would like for you to do is when you recover that truck that I'm sure you're about to go recover, I would like for you to test it for gun residue because you won't find any inside that truck. So then what? then what are you going to do when you find out that there was no shots fired out of that truck and you've shot me in the back of the head? Then what? And they're all just kind of, the one cop was like, can I pat you down? I'm like, absolutely. So I put my hands on the top of the cop car. I got blood everywhere. I'm finger painting in my own blood, looking into the camera. I'm just, at this point, I'm losing my mind. So here comes the ambulance. Finally, I got one cop standing behind me with like a maxi pad trying to like I said, don't fucking touch me. Just don't touch me. Like that. Just don't do it. Don't touch me. So the ambulance guy, I said, hey, I said, can you just pull this out and I can walk back, you know? He's like, no, you're going to get in here. I came all the way out here and you have a bullet in your head. So I'd like for you to get in here now. I'm like, whatever, dude. So I get in there and he says to me, he's like, do you think your hair stopped the bullet? I was like, definitely. That's definitely what happened. He's just like, yeah, maybe. You never know. So I get to the hospital and I was a raving lunatic. I mean, I was cussing everybody out. The cops would be standing outside my door and I'm like, yeah, I have a bullet in my head, but I can hear everything that you're saying. So shut the fuck up, you know? But then the feds showed up. The DEA showed up and they started questioning me. And so I knew what time it was. I knew what was getting ready to go down.
I don't understand. Like, they're not like, I don't understand that they're after the wanted guy who's driving your truck that they pull over. Doesn't seem like they're after you, or were they trying to get after you? You know, like, I'm not understanding. And why did the feds show up? For what reason?
Well, the only thing that I can really make sense of the whole thing is the guy that sent the text messages with the full description of everything he was going to send to the DEA. He did it. And it's the only thing that truly makes sense as to, I think that night they were coming to my house. So I think that the way things worked out was better because they didn't kick in my door when my daughter was there. And they didn't, you know, yeah, I got shot, but I would rather have taken a bullet in the back of my head than have my door kicked in with my daughter there. So honestly,
so I'm sorry. So the feds have nothing to do with it. You think the cops were just after this guy?
I don't know. I think they were coming to my house because of that text message. The guy, I think that guy.
Oh, so you thought they were all together. It was the feds and the cops were on their way there. Maybe they were watching it, waiting for the feds or something, and they saw your truck leave and they just followed it or something. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's how that went down. And so the cops, you know, the feds, they asked me some interesting questions. And, you know, thinking back, some of the stuff that they were asking was similar to that text message, like all the details in the text message about, well, I know you're selling drugs. And they pulled me over. You know, I'd gotten pulled over for speeding and everything. And they'd searched me, I don't know how many times, and never found anything, ever. Never got caught with anything at all. And then after that, after they took me to the hospital, they went to my house to search my house. And the lady had taken my daughter. Because I was on the side of the road with my phone. I called her. I said, listen, I just got shot in the back of the head. You need to get my daughter. Here's my dad's phone number. You need to get a hold of him and get her out of there and get going. You know, get her to my dad's house if you don't mind, you know. And so she was en route to go try to get my daughter to my dad. And the cops surrounded that car and pulled my daughter out with guns drawn and everything and pulled her out. Obviously didn't find anything. But they went on to my house and they searched my house that night. They didn't find any gun or any drugs. What they found was my 12 gauge, which was legal for me to have because I wasn't a felon. I had a 12 gauge for home protection. It was at my house. They took a picture of it at my house.
I mean, first of all, I'm wondering, do they have a warrant to go in your house? Like, what gave them the right to go into your house?
They said they were looking for that guy.
I'm a passenger in a vehicle that you shot at.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with my house.
Exactly.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so, yeah, so they went and searched my house. They didn't find any drugs whatsoever. They found the gun. They took a picture, and that picture turned out to be part of my charge. Was that picture? Yeah. Hold on. It gets better. So, when the feds showed up to the hospital, I ended up getting a hold of my my attorney, who's a federal attorney too, and you know, he knew about everything that happened, getting shot and all that stuff. And I, at one point, you know, he'd called me. He was like, you need to probably come in and talk to me. Like, we need to get some stuff figured out. In the meantime, the guy that was driving the vehicle, he called me from jail, and he was like, the feds are here and they know everything. And I need for you to not be a hero. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you can't save anybody and you can't save yourself. He's like, so there's no need to lie. It's time. You got to tell your whole truth, and you got to tell everything. He's like, because they're here and they have everything. They have statements from everybody. They have more statements than they possibly need. He's like, they're coming for you, and don't try to be a hero. And I'm like, what? You know, what does that mean? After you get shot in the head, there's not a lot of clarity. I mean, like, you know what I mean?
Okay.
There's not a lot of clarity, and there's not a lot of, you know, the time frame from when I got shot to like when I got indicted was about 5 months, and there's a lot that's real foggy in between there.
You said you wanted to jump back to going to the hospital and they removed the bullet.
Yes. So the cops kept talking in the hallway about how it was really a piece of glass on my head and it wasn't a bullet. And I was like, listen to me. I can hear all of you guys talking, and I can smell my hair and my flesh burning from this bullet. It's not a piece of glass. And so I cussed everybody out and lost my mind. And then finally the doctor came in and looks at it, and he's like, yeah, it's a bullet. And right around that time when they pulled it out is when I went into shock. Like the nurse kept coming and giving me morphine and stuff. And I said, listen, honey, you can hit me with every drop you have in this facility. I'm not going out. They wanted me to shut up. They were like, please make her go away. I was like, I will not pass out because I'm going to sue these motherfuckers. I never did, but, and then my next memory is being in the shower with these nurses, and they were trying to get all the blood off of me. And then my next memory is I'm in a hospital bed, and there's a cop sitting next to me, and I'm handcuffed to the bed. And I looked at her and said, you got any pink ones? And that was the last of that. And then I woke back up, and then I had pink ones on. And then and then my next memory is my dad was coming to get me, and I was on my way home with 19 staples in my head. And no charges. No nothing. They didn't even try to charge, you know, saying that that we'd shot at them like they had been saying that night. Didn't do anything like that.
Well, okay.
Did get the guy, and he had been wanted, and so he was in jail. He was in jail. I believe he had a parole violation, and so they were holding him on that. So during the time he was in jail, at some point the feds came to him and sat down with him. The DEA came to him. And so then at that point is when he called me from jail and was like, hey, the feds are here. I need you to know the feds are here and they know everything. And he's like, yeah, so you can't, so don't be a hero. And that really wasn't registering as to what does that mean? What do you mean don't be a hero? He's like, everybody is told. And I need you to understand that in the federal system, like everybody's going to tell. So don't be that one girl that goes, you know, you're going to have to talk. And I'm like, right. I'm like, fuck you. I'm not doing this shit. So at some point, after that, again, a little bit foggy from the gunshot and all that stuff. I'm still using drugs at this point, by the way. Still using, not as much, you know, I'm not selling, I'm not doing anything like that, but people would stop by and get me high. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely cool. I'm in. Wasn't even thinking about stopping, even after getting shot in the head. And so at some point, my attorney got a hold of me and was like, okay, you're going to need to come in. And so I went in, and this might have been after I got in, the indictment came out. I'm really foggy on some things, but he was like, you're going to have to talk to the DEA. And I'm like, yeah, fuck the cops. I'm not doing this shit. He's like, well, I really thought you would say that. And so I would really like for you to sit down and read some things. And I'm like, okay. So I sat down with my discovery, and he's like, you can spend as much time as you want here. You can't take it with you, and you cannot take pictures of it, and you can't ever have it, but you can come here and spend as much time with it as you need. You'll have your own office back there. You can just take your time. I'm like, okay. So I start reading this like with a fine tooth comb, and you know, the names are redacted, but you know who's who.
Yeah.
As I'm going through it, I'm trying to find one that mirrors that text message because I'm like, I bet you anything, this is where it all began. And I found one that was very similar. So I was like, oh, this has got to be that guy, And so I sat with it for a really long time. I figured out who almost everybody was. There was a couple that I couldn't figure out. There was some that clearly didn't know who I was. And there was several that had me confused with somebody totally different, which ended up being this guy, the text message guy's girlfriend that was living at the hotel. They said that I was her and that I'd been living in this hotel for a year. And I'm going through this stuff and I'm like, you understand there's like records and like cameras. These people were living in a hotel because they blew up their place and their insurance was paying for them to live there. They'd had a meth lab. They blew their other place up. So the insurance was paying for them. You have the room number. You can check the records and find out it isn't me. But nobody believed me. They thought I was I'm like, I have a house. I don't go to hotels. I have my very own house. Why would I go there? That's weird. So after I went through my discovery, I decided, I was like, you know what? There is no street code. There is literally nothing. There's all these people that were like, oh, you do the crime, you do the time. They all walked in and told. And not just like, just normal statements, like just shooting the shit. Detailed Sabrena stories. I mean, they were all having a ball. You could tell by their way they're writing, oh, what'd she do next? And then what happened? And I thought, you know what? Fuck this. Literally, like these people that are like, oh yeah, I'm a hardened criminal. The federal system is the biggest fucking joke on the planet. And so I talked. I was like, you know what? I got shit to say too. I was like, I'm not going to sit here and take this shit. I'm not going to go do a whole bunch of time for all the people that just told on me. For what? For a street code that's clearly not even real. But there was something, there was something about that discovery that the day I was indicted is my clean date. And that was over 10 years ago now. But there was something about reading that discovery that was a big moment of clarity for me because, you have this thing in your brain as like the drug world is this way and you got this street code and people are gonna, they're not gonna tell on you because I mean, why would they tell on you? You're cool to them. Like you're cool. Nobody's gonna tell on you. They all told. They lined up to tell.
My wife, who also got indicted on a conspiracy, was going to trial. I think I told you this. She was going to trial, and like a week or so before her trial date, she got her discovery. And so like in the federal system, I think it's 10 days beforehand, you get a list of the people that are going to, go on this film. And she was like, she said, I just couldn't believe how many people there were. Like, I knew all these people. And she's like, and they were all the people that she was thinking, well, these are my friends. They're not going to tell on me. And she's like, of course, a lot of the girls that were on her case were in the same dorm. And she's like, and they would get they would go to see their lawyer. You think it's their lawyer, it's not. And then they go see the lawyer the next day and the next day and then they'd come back and they'd get their discovery and they'd go see their lawyer. And then one day they'd just move them.
Yeah.
And then you'd find out that she took a plea. And then the next one, and she's like, they're all leaving and I'm still there. And then like a week or so before trial, I get my discovery. And she's like, everybody's telling on me. Like everybody's ready to, all of them that are in there with her, like, fuck that shit. I ain't telling nothing.
Yeah.
Fuck these motherfuckers. We're going to beat them at trial. She's like, all of them are taking pleas and they're all cooperating. She's like, and then I'm the last one standing. She and the main guy were the last two people standing. And now you're just fucked. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? The reality is like, it's not just one person that they get to tell. It's so many that one person is a moot point. Oh,
yeah, it's overwhelming.
Oh, you don't want to tell? Oh, okay. Cause we got 15 more. That's going to tell.
I can say something. I can jump on the bandwagon and I can get 5 years, or I can be a gangster, go to trial and get fucking 25 years.
Yeah.
No.
For what?
Yeah, bad idea.
For what? These people that clearly weren't your people?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, and I struggled with that. At first, I was like, God, this is terrible. Like, how am I supposed to do this? Like, this is awful. But the reality is that they don't need you. You can either help yourself or fuck yourself. Like, you got a choice, and they're going to do it with or without you. They've already got it. They've already got that case all figured out. And so when the indictment came down, I was the kingpin. Yeah, Kingpin out of, I think 9 was the first go. And so when I got arraigned, they did the whole cops all over my driveway, big guns, lots of craziness. The cop that drove me down to federal court.
What they do? They banged on your door and said, come out here? Or
no, I was on my way back from my parents' house. It was like 8:00 in the morning. So I was driving and I was I popped up over my hill and I could see my property, and like there's cops everywhere. There's federal vehicles all up and down my driveway. Then the county cops surrounded me with it was a big deal. And so I was like, can I pee? You know what I mean? Like, what's up? Can I? They're like, absolutely not. I'm like, right on. Okay. But I was in my car with this Russian guy, and he was really cool. And he was like, he's like, this is terrible, and I'm sorry that you're going through this. He's like, but you seem like a nice person. Like, this could be your way. Like, this could be your defining moment. This could be your way to change. You know what I mean? Like that.
This is the cop?
Yeah. This is what the DEA. Oh, and by the way, it was his last day. He was retiring after that. Yeah. And I never, I always kind of wondered where he went, because he was like really cool, like talking me through a lot of stuff, but didn't know how to get to federal court. I had to show him how to get there. It was fine. So when I was arraigned, I remember sitting there, and the judge asked the prosecutor, he said, do you have any physical evidence? He said, no. He said, do you have any wiretap? And he's like, no. He said, do you have any hand-to-hand? And he said, no. And the judge said, what do you have? He's like, oh, we have a lot of statements. He's like, oh, okay. Because as we're going through it, I'm like, what? We're going to do the damn thing. We're cool. No, we're not cool. He's like, oh, okay, cool. So they take me back, and they sent me to federal holding in Osceola, Missouri. But I remember getting on the van with all these people, and, you're just shell-shocked. You just don't know what you're going to do. And all these guys are on the van, and they're like, what are your charges? And I'm like, drug trafficking with furtherance of a weapon, maintaining a drug premise, conspiracy to sell. At that point, I had $1.7 million in money laundering. And they're like, where are you at on the indictment? I was like, I'm number 1. And they're like, you're the kingpin? And I was like, is that bad? And they're like, yeah, that's really bad. Like, that's really, really bad. So, I really didn't think I was going to get out on pretrial, but they did. They kicked me out on pretrial about 3 days later. And my pretrial officer was awesome. And he was like, hey, what do you think it's time to get some rehab? And I was like, let's do it. I was like, this is my defining moment. Like, I've got to do the damn thing. But, I after reading that discovery, I was ready to let that world go. That was like the death to that life, and what I thought it was. It was just not anything like what it was something that I had made up in my head. It wasn't real. And, I got 9 years. I ended up getting 9 years after 3 years of pretrial. And,
years? You still got 9 years?
Mm-hmm.
You got 9 years with a 5K1?
Yeah. Oh, hold on. Let's back up. So when I was in, so I was on pretrial for 3 years. I went in, I turned myself in at the time of plea, and I had to sit in federal holding for a year waiting for sentencing. It was over a year. And so everybody was getting their, what am I thinking of? I've just lost my train of thought.
Discovery?
Their
please.
Piece of paper. Help me out here.
Their what? Sentencing, or their, I don't know what to say.
PSR.
Oh, pre-sentence report. Yes.
Okay. So everybody was getting their PSIs. All these ladies were getting their PSIs. And I was like, calling my lawyer. I was like, I want my PSI. He's like, no, you don't. I'm like, do you have it? He's like, no, but you don't want it. I was like, why? He's like, just do your time right now. Just, you don't want it. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I finally got it. And they gave it to me, and then they locked it was a regular lockdown time. And so I'm sitting there and I'm going through all these papers. It was pretty thick, even though I had no criminal history, but they added a lot of statements and stuff in there. So I'm going through it, and people are yelling through the wall. I'm like, where do I see what my time frame is? Like, where's that at? And they're like, it's a numbers range. Just keep flipping through. You're going to see numbers range. So I'm looking for numbers. Keep flipping back through this thing, and I'm like, I don't see numbers anywhere. So I started reading. It was life.
There was a life sentence?
Yeah. That's what my range was. There was no months. There was no numbers. It was just life. And I'm like, what the fuck? Are you serious right now? Because they had hit me with 44 kilos of meth. All the statements that people had given, the statements that people gave were really interesting. Like, there was a guy that I know exactly who it is. He said that him and his son, he has an older son, him and his son had stopped by my house and had seen me cutting up with power tools. And my lawyer was like, well, that's crazy. I'm sure that didn't happen. I was like, actually, that happened one time, and I know exactly who this is. But he put 5 kilos on me. And, he wasn't part of the indictment, but he got indicted later. And guess what he got? Probation.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. And then it'll be the first one to be like, oh, I bet you're a rat. I got you. But then, you had the statements. There was a statement in there about I had some girl dropped off and I was hunting her in the woods. And I was like, it wasn't like that. Okay, so this girl had it was like right around Christmas time, and she had disappeared. Her family couldn't find her because she was getting high at this drug house. And I'm like, they kept going on the news, oh, missing person. I'm like, she is not missing. Well, because they were saying she was a missing person, the cops started going around kicking in people's houses saying that they were looking for her. And I was like, fuck this. She's not missing. So I knew somebody that knew her. I was like, go get her, take her to the police, take her to the police and drop her off. And then we'll call the news and let them know she's been found. So they don't need to keep kicking in people's houses. So that's what we did. I wasn't hunting her in the woods. I mean,
right.
Shut up.
That's what it turned into in the statement.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, but all it takes is one person to say, I saw her with 10 kilos. That person can be high. That person doesn't even need to know you. And they're like, oh, perfect. We'll take that. We'll write that down. And they, when you take your plea, they ask you, are you under the influence of anything? And if you are, you can't take your plea. So why is that a different standard of care as for like people that are making statements? You should probably find out if they are, under the influence, but they don't care about that. They'll take anything because it's a ghost dope. And that's the easiest way to indict somebody. And you can't fight a ghost. There's nothing you can do. Nothing.
So all of these and these people are going to get on the stand. They're all going to say all of this. And I mean, I know I've just from looking at these things, like I've gone through people's discovery because, I wrote a bunch of guys' stories when I was locked up, and they'll show you the discovery. And some guys like, oh, I bought, whatever, quarter of a pound from them. And then the cops are like, well, how often did you do that? Oh, I did that, every 2 weeks and how long you been dealing with him? Oh, about 2 years. And then the next thing you know, that's 12 pounds of, meth or whatever it is. And, because they just add it up. And then if you talk to the actual guy and the guy's like, that guy bought, half a pound from me or a quarter of a pound from me, 3 fucking times. Mm-hmm. I did it 2 years earlier. I was selling him whatever they were, very minor amounts. And then I didn't sell him anything for 8 months. And then he, so they're like, they took the largest quantity every 2 weeks and multiplied it times, 2 years. And it ended up being whatever it was, 6 pounds or 12, whatever how many pounds it was. So yeah, they're doing that to try and put as much on you so you can get as much time as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. So at some point, because I was on pretrial release, so I was going to all the pre-sentencing stuff. And the next thing I know, they're going to do a superseding indictment. And I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, what's happening? Well, text message guy, he got caught with tons of guns and a whole bunch of heroin. So guess what? He became the kingpin on the whole indictment. And I became number 2. I've never been so happy to be number 2 in my entire life. I'm like, oh, I'm number 2. This is great. But at the pretrial hearing, they said, the prosecutor said, well, we were not going to indict him, but he forced our hands. And I was like, oh, I bet you weren't going to indict him because he gave me to you. Like that, you know, and it was all kind of unfolding. You know what I mean? It's like that thing where you're just like, that motherfucker, he got me. He got me because I didn't want to date him and I didn't want to do business with him. He got me just from that.
All right.
Ask me about my dating life. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, please don't flirt with me. I don't want anything to do with anybody. Just, I don't want to reject. I just don't talk. I'm just gonna hang out with my dog. But yeah, I mean, I will have a little bit of trauma from that. Like it blows my mind. And I've processed that, you know, I've thought about it so many times because I'm like, it took one guy to kick that whole thing off. It took one guy to end up getting me shot in the back of the head, which could have killed me. That could have been the end of me.
Right.
But then a decade later, I'm still dealing with this federal stuff. So you go to trial. You're supposed to, trial. You go to sentencing. You're supposed to get a life sentence. Okay.
Did you go into court with a PSI that said life on it? So they redid it.
They had redone it because I went back to my lawyer and I was like, are you serious with this stuff? Like, you know, I'm like, first of all of these are not me. There's somebody that lives in a hotel. And at one point when I had talked to the DEA, I told them, I said, this is not me. I have not lived at this hotel. And they told me I was a liar. And I was like, you know what? Fuck this shit. Like, I can't even tell you the truth. Like that, you don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear anything. You're too involved in this inflated story. So, whatever. But they did find out that a lot of that wasn't me. And most of that stuff didn't come out until sentencing. And then, they changed my PSI. There was some stuff that happened. I don't know if I should talk about any of that quite yet, but I ended up ultimately getting 9-year sentence. I got 108 months. And so I remember when they said it, I was like, what did they say? You know, you're in a complete fog. I'm in an orange jumpsuit, shackles and chains. The whole courtroom's full of my family. And I'm like, what just happened? My ex-husband and his wife is there on the other side and they're dying. They want to speak to the court. And the marshals were like, sit down. Nobody wants to hear from you. He's like, I need to say what I need to say. And they're like, you are irrelevant, dude. Like, shut up. Yeah.
What were they going to say? They wanted to just bash you?
Oh, yeah. When I got, so I had custody, I was 50-50 custody up until I went into federal holding. And then when I went into federal holding, they were letting my parents bring my daughter to see me once a week. And then once I was sentenced, they took off to Florida with her and cut ties with my whole family. So there was quite a few years I didn't get to talk to her. We're best friends now. She has no ties down there at all. It's just me and her. So it works out, in the end. But yes, I did get a 9-year sentence. I went to Pekin, Illinois, and I'd done 1 year in federal holding, so that counted towards my time. I went to Pekin, Illinois, and I did 3 years there. And then, but COVID had hit. And so I thought for sure, I didn't qualify for the First Step Act. I didn't qualify for any of that stuff. So I thought for sure there's no way they're going to let me out. But they did. My counselor came and got me, and he was like, hey, guess what? You're going to quarantine because you're leaving. And I was like, you're kidding me. He's like,
after how long? How many years?
4 years. I was at my 50% mark. Yeah.
Nice.
They had put me in for it, but I just assumed that since I didn't qualify for anything else because of my drug trafficking with the furtherance of a weapon charge, for that gun that they took a picture of that was mine to have illegally. Oh, but there was a couple of statements made by people that they saw me with a gun somewhere at my house, whatever. So yeah, because of that charge, it disqualified me from everything else. So I just never dreamed that it was going to happen for COVID. So yeah, so I got out at my 4-year mark.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long ago was that?
June 1st of 21, and I have been on home confinement ever since. Yeah.
All right. Well,
I'm just about done. I got 138 days left.
Okay. And then you're on just probation. You have what, 3 years probation?
5.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I had.
Yeah.
So what do you do for a living?
So I have a rep for this builder, and they're awesome. I sell barndominiums and custom homes and post frame buildings. So you don't know barndominium. So you've got like condos downtown, right? It's like having a condo but in the country, and you can do really cool things with it. So say you want like a big shop, or you want like a horse barn attached to your residence, and everything's like right there. That's what we do. Yeah. Or like say you want a hangar, you want to make a hangar because you got an airplane and you want living quarters with it. That's what we build.
Okay.
Well, I'm a rep, so I basically work my pricing program and then work with customers. I got a company car. I'm all over the place during business hours. And then in the evenings, I'm at the gym for 2 hours, and then I'm at home, and that's my life. But I can't complain because, I mean, I would still be in prison right now. Well, I'd probably be at the halfway house.
Still, out of all possible scenarios, you know, it's probably the best case scenario, right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And your daughter lives with you?
Well, yes. Yeah. She lives with me, and she is in school full time, and she's got a really good job also. So
how old is she?
She's 19.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. She's 19 now.
I thought she was still like maybe, I don't know, 10 or 11 or something.
No, she was 12 when I went in.
Okay.
Yeah, she was 12. And so, but yeah, she came, when I got out early, I was like, hey, surprise, I want my daughter. And I ended up flying her back. He had kicked her out at one point, so I sent her a plane ticket. She flew back, and then he showed up and said that I had kidnapped her. I totally took it. He set me up. He set me up, and I was like, I fed right into it. And I was like, absolutely, I'll do anything for my daughter. So then, you know, the court got involved, and I had to do supervised visits and stuff, but he's in Florida, so I'm doing it on video. It was a mess. It was horrible. And then the day she turned 18, she caught the first flight out of there, and she's never been back, never turned around. That's what happens when you know what I mean? Like, what do you think what's gonna happen? But yeah, so she's been back, and we've been cool ever since.
That's great.
Yeah, no,
another good outcome.
Listen, I can't complain about anything. I really can't. Like, everything has worked out exactly the way it I couldn't expect it to work out any better. And honestly, if I would have kept going the way I was going without being indicted, I'd be dead.
Right.
I'm sure of it. I'm sure I'd be dead, or it would be in a much worse place. So, you know, at the end of the day, I guess I should thank all those people that told on me, because they say, you know, they saved my life. At the end of the day, they did. They saved my life, and they changed my life for the better. Because on the other side, you know, if you get your shit together and you got your head right, there's a lot of opportunity on the other side.
You know, what's funny is, like, every time whenever I tell my story and I'm like, yeah, and so he got arrested and he cooperated and they put together a task force, and, you know, you're telling that to somebody, and sometimes they'll give you that, like that, oh man, oh, he cooperated, oh, he stitched on you. And I'm like, nah, I did the right thing. He had a daughter.
Yeah.
He didn't owe me anything. He owed his daughter something, and it was the fastest way for him to get out of it. And who the fuck am I? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just the right thing. That was the right thing for him to do. So, and listen, and I got tons of those people.
Yeah.
That like, you did the right thing and I was doing the wrong thing, and you can't be running around acting like a scumbag with scumbags and then expect those people to be stand-up people.
Right.
You know? So, but I was gonna mention one more thing to you. Shoot. I can't remember. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
but that's just it, is that you can't expect that. But it's the best way to dismount from that world. I mean, yeah. You get extracted real easily from it if you're in that, you know, once you sit down with the discovery and you know how the real world works. But, you know, it's interesting because I'll be talking to people that think they may be getting indicted for something or other. And I'm like, yeah, you're hit. You're hit. And they don't want to hear it, you know? No. They don't want any part of hearing anything like that. So I do a lot of the stuff on TikTok now, and I talk to a lot of people that are being indicted or come out on the other side. So it's been really interesting to have that community, especially on home confinement where you can't, I'm kind of bored. So
Oh yeah, you got to be all in on TikTok now. What's your TikTok?
Sabrena Morgan, Sabrena Morgan, Morgan.
Listen, I'm so bad at this thing. I don't know even.
Dude, I've stuck.
There it is. Okay, Sabrena
Morgan. Oh, there's a whole bunch of them. I'm the one that's got like 60-some thousand.
I mean, I got Sabrena Morgan, but I don't
66,000
followers. I got 65,000. I don't even know how to do that. I don't even know how to do this. Well, you get 66,000 followers.
Yeah,
that's great.
Here,
right?
I'll forward this to you, and then you could see me.
Okay. We'll put the description we'll put the link in the description.
Yeah.
Box. And do you feel like, is there anything else you want to mention, or you feel okay?
I don't know. I feel like that was the one thing that I was stressing on that I really wanted to get out. I mean, I have done a lot of work with dream.org, and I'm working towards getting a halfway house opened in Kansas City. And that's something that I'm really interested in pushing for. Because right now the halfway houses are a mess with the federal system, because in 2017 they shut down. They quietly cut the funding for the Second Chance Act, which shut down 16 halfway houses across the country. And then in 2018, they signed in the First Step Act. And when they did that, if it would have gone into effect when it was supposed to, we would have had a crisis a long time ago. But now we're feeling it finally. So, for instance, my halfway house is in Topeka, Kansas. So I have to drive 88 miles to do my check-in, to do a UA, and to do a check-in. I get in the car, I cross state lines, I get on the turnpike, and I drive 88 miles to go do this, and then turn around and come back every single week. I'm salary. So I'm not the one that has to worry about like taking off work and everything like that. But there's a lot of people in my position that's not nearly as lucky as I am, where they have to take off work and they have to do all this stuff. And then if they want to take advantage of any services that the halfway house might provide, they have to take off work, because the only services they provide is out in that area. They won't, outsource it, and they won't do like video therapy or anything like that. And so, we got to get more halfway houses. The halfway house in Kansas City shut down in 2017. And, there's only 2 federal halfway houses in Missouri. One's in Springfield, one's in St. Louis. And so you have this giant area has nobody, like if you're on home confinement, they can deny you home confinement. And the 2 halfway houses that are close enough are Topeka and Leavenworth, and they're full. So there's people that are trying to come out of prison right now that are eligible to come out because of First Step credits, and they can't come out because there's not a halfway house. And so the problem is not people wanting to open up halfway houses. There's a lot of people pushing to open them. It's the BOP that are dragging their feet to put their request for proposals out so that people can give them a proposal for a halfway house contract. So once they drug their feet on the First Step Act, giving everybody credits, and now they're dragging their feet on the other end of this. But I think there's a lot of people not making that correlation between the fact that it's the BOP. You have to wait for them to put out a request for a proposal in order for anybody to try to make, propose anything for a halfway house. And so that's kind of my passion right now, is to get involved and try to get some of these halfway houses going. I don't want to run one. Let me be clear. I don't want to be part of that. But I would like to get involved with legislation, and I'm involved with dream.org. So when I'm done with home confinement, I'll do like lobby days and stuff with them. But I think that's kind of, that's one of my things, is that you got to get that out there. So
okay.
I hope I did okay, because I don't even know what the fuck I just talked about.
No, you did great.
I'm sweating profusely. Just wait.
Why? Because you're nervous?
Yes. Do I act?
No, you did great. You seem very comfortable.
Oh, okay. It's because I'm a liar. So I'm a good liar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen. I mean, I'm gonna. So you're good. I'm gonna like wrap it up, and I'll mention your TikTok. Do you want me to mention the TikTok?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hold on one second.
Oh, I also write blogs on Medium.
Oh, on Medium. Okay.
Yeah.
Medium.
Yeah. So,
Medium magazine?
what?
Medium magazine? It's like an online magazine. Is that it?
No, it's medium.com. So when I was in prison, my brother came to me and he was like, you have a really interesting story. You should start writing. And I was like, he's like, you should write blogs. And I was like, what's a blog? Yeah, I didn't know. So he started sending me articles on, blogs and different things. And he's like, so just pick a topic and then you're going to write on it and you can email it to me and then I'll publish it. I'll just do a quick edit and I'll publish it. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I picked out my topic and I started writing and I emailed it to him. Well, the prison computers, it's 13,000 characters is all you get. And you're fighting people, you're fighting the line and you're battling the 30 minutes that you have to write. And so it was a mess, but I would write all week long. And then on Fridays I would land the plane, I'd sit there and get it all cleaned up. And then Saturday morning at 6 a.m. I'd start typing it up. And so I started sending him all these blogs and he started publishing them. So by the time I got out, I basically had control of my own narrative because I was able to write my story and I'll send you one right now. I was able to write my side of the story on a lot of things. And I haven't got into a lot of stuff because I do want to write a book. But yeah, so I just sent you the link.
Okay.
Yep.
And it's medium.com.
Medium.com. Yeah. And I got a bunch of blogs on there.
Hey, you guys, I appreciate you watching. Do me a favor if you like the video, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of videos just like this. Also, we're going to leave all of Sabrena's links in the description box. So just go in the description box and click on the link to her TikTok and any other, and medium.com, and check out all of her stuff. Also, do me a favor, please consider joining my Patreon. It's $10 a month. We put Patreon exclusive content on the website for Patreon. I'm sure that made sense, but leave me a comment and share the video. And I really appreciate you guys watching. Thank you very much. See ya.